Now, what we're going to do is we've got the panel here. I'm going to give them 2 minutes. I'm going to be very disciplined here. They're going to get 2 minutes each to sort of set out their stall, and then we're going to start the debate. I'll ask a couple of questions, and then, as I say, I'm very keen that, if you've got things you want to ask or points that you want to make or issues you want to raise with the panel or any corrections you might want to make to things the panel have said, don't hesitate to get in there. But let's start at this end. Con O'Neill is the financial director of Harland and Wolff, obviously a shipyard, well placed to benefit from this kind of huge investment opportunity. Harland and Wolff, of course, Belfast shipyard, famously built the Titanic. I had to bring it up. I mean, people must do that the whole time. It's really unfair. But obviously, since the Titanic, you've built a bit of other stuff as well, haven't you? So, but if you'd like your 2 minutes begin now.
Harland and Wolff would see there's a tremendous benefit to this new industry. We have successfully participated in it. We have successfully executed projects offshore. We see the tremendous challenges it places upon us. If we are going to do more and do it better, we need to invest in the people, we need to invest in the infrastructure and the equipment. But that challenge will give tremendous benefit to not just to Harland and Wolff, but to the province of Northern Ireland. And we say, yes, what we need is the confidence to move forward and the confidence that as a construction facility and a logistics facility for these projects, we will get our fair share of that work, and it won't go to a situation where we are importing all the components from the rest of the world. So what can we do to make offshore wind more affordable? We can learn from oil and gas. We can learn from our experiences in shipbuilding. We can take what are very good standards of health and safety and environmental management in the UK construction sector and apply it to this industry. And if we can attain a situation of continuity of work, we can also get the benefits from that.
Excellent. Very good. 1.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Very good.
That longer.
Next up, we have Maria McCafferty, who's the Chief Executive of the British Wind Energy Association, the co-sponsors of this debate. So how can we benefit from this vast kind of opportunity that the round 3 presents to us all?
Okay, thanks, Justin. Do forgive me for correcting, but there's no T in McCaffery.
Oh, yeah.
But lots of people want to put one in. First of all, let me say I'm absolutely delighted to be co-presenting this with Carbon Trust, and that on the panel in front of you, everybody here is directly or indirectly very closely associated with BWEA, and I thought I can pretty well second guess, except for Con, and we've heard from him, what they're all going to say. And I wanted to say something that I don't think anybody else is going to say, and it's very simply this. How much the case we've heard, the case is compelling. Tom just outlined it along the dimensions of security of supply, climate change, the need for a low-carbon economy. So the case is absolutely compelling, and in my view, the outcome is absolutely inevitable. We are going to have a greater and greater contribution from renewable energy in our energy mix, and the biggest single contributor for that is going to be offshore wind. The real important issue, on which I'm looking forward to a really lively debate from your side of this panel, is on how much benefit we are going to get, because that is a determinant of your appetite, your courage, your determination to take your share, because it's going to happen anyway, and we have to learn the lessons from where we lost out in onshore wind development. We were at the table. We were part of that discussion. We saw the benefit. We saw the size and scale of the opportunity, but we lost out to our near European neighbours because we did not seize that opportunity with both hands. And if there's one thing I want to try and inspire you to do this evening is to understand this is very real, it's very big, and it's very long term.
Very good. 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Excellent. Rob, Hastings is the director of the Marine Estate. So you've been auctioning off these vast areas of the ocean around Britain, haven't you, to operators who are going to hopefully build these wind farms. Mm-hmm. Tell us How are we going to benefit from this engineering challenge?
There was 3 questions tonight I was asked about, which was the potential for a new industry from offshore wind? Is there green jobs? And how do we make it affordable? On the question of potential, I think, of a new industry, I think things have moved on from that question a bit. I don't think there's any doubt that there's potential. In fact, I think it's already arrived. And those people that are involved with this will know that. We already have £3 billion invested offshore as we stand today. There's a build rate at the moment around about £2 billion per year. And I've just signed up over the last, as you mentioned, I've just signed up over the last 2 months, commitments from some of the biggest players in the world to deliver the Round 3 program, which potentially is 75 billion or thereabouts. But right now, today, there's about £500 million worth of development capital sitting on the table, which is being spent and burnt at a rate which will be expended within the next 3 to 4 years. That has already resulted in something in the region of 300 jobs being created just to do that one activity of Round 3. So the notion that it's a potential, I think we're beyond that. It's real, it's here, it's happening. Is there green jobs potential for the UK? Clearly there is. In fact, I don't think we'll get a build rate that we need, the 2020 target, if we don't have UK content, simply because it just gets too expensive to move things very far, which are very big. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So we need to have the green jobs to actually get the targets. How do we make it affordable? I got 3 ideas. Industrialization, that means this is 5,000 machines to be built in the space of about, or constructed in the space of about 6 years. That's repetition, it's process, it's large-scale industrialization. It's collaboration and mature relationships across the industry. And that means understanding how to contract together better so that we can get a clear distribution of risk. And fundamentally, from my mind, we have to be prepared to deliver the commitments. That breeds confidence, confidence breeds confidence, confidence breeds confidence.
Excellent. That was about 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Very, very good, very succinct. And next, Anne Licker, who is the Vice President of Wind Power at Statoil ASA. So presumably, you're hoping to get some of this market and benefit from it. But it's a Norwegian, Statoil, of course, is a Norwegian energy company. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to the panel. And I'm from Statoil, and we are the biggest oil and gas operator at sea, at deep water in the world. And we also provide UK with about 20% of the gas consumption. And we see offshore wind as a very interesting growth opportunity for us and an area where our competence could make a difference. And we also think that this should be the way Britain looks at offshore wind. You have an excellent marine cluster, you have an excellent oil and gas business, and this offshore wind will provide an opportunity for further growth offshore. And I think this is a very similar situation to what we experienced in the 70s and 80s, when you actually took the occasion and rose to it and brought about a whole new oil and gas industry, which is immensely profitable for the UK. And I think offshore wind is now in the same position. So I also agree with the others. This is going to happen. We see in small scale what it means to coastal communities. We are now building an offshore an operating base for the Sheringham Shoal project in Wells next to sea. It's a touristic area. We're coming in there with a relatively small project, providing a 50-year horizon for 40 year-round jobs. That's very hands-on and very popular in the community. And that's what we're going to see happen all along the coast.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anne. That's wonderful. And finally, we've got Robin Oakley, who's the climate change spokesman. Is that the right? That's fine. Climate change expert at Greenpeace. So your 2 minutes begins now.
Thank you, Justin. And thank you to the Carbon Trust and the British Wind Energy Association for having us here. You won't be surprised to hear that Greenpeace is very enthusiastic about offshore wind. We love it, but equally we think it's crucial. For us, and particularly in a world that's gone through the somewhat uncomfortable experience of Copenhagen, we think one of the most important things that we can do in Northern Europe and in the UK is actually prove that low-carbon economy is possible, that it can be done with benefits, and that it can deliver both growth and low carbon together. And the UK is well placed to show that that is possible and that is real. So for us, offshore wind is about competitiveness. It's about British competitiveness in the world. It's about energy security. It's about ensuring that we keep the lights on while without wrecking the environment. And it's about manufacturing. It's about our engineering sector moving forward and our economy being founded on a firm base. As President Obama said in his State of the Union address, the countries that lead the low-carbon economy will lead the global economy. And that's very much something that we believe at Greenpeace. So we've got a short timeline. We can't manage without onshore wind. We can't forget that. Offshore wind is absolutely central, it's crucial, and we're going to need marine renewables of all kinds in the longer term as well. Let's get behind them. Delivery is a challenge. Others in this room are going to elaborate those challenges more than I, but it's going to require changes, it's going to require re-regulation, it's going to require effort. But fundamentally, and this is, I think, my main point, it's going to require us to have less of a no-can-do attitude and much more of a can-do attitude, because the confidence that we need in the public, the confidence we need in the industry, and the confidence that we need from investors won't come from talking the industry down. Because let's not forget, Spain, China, the USA, they're not waiting, they're doing it now, and we need to get on board and say this is something we intend to do, and it's something we can do, and it's something we're going to do.
Excellent. What great timings, everybody. That was great. So that's the panel. We obviously there is an empty chair, Ed Crooks. Apparently he's on a big story. We're all waiting to see what it is. And he will come later, so we'll leave the chair empty for him, and hopefully he'll join us later. But to kick things off, there are a couple of questions I'd like to ask immediately off the back of that. I think the key one here is, obviously, it's great. You've auctioned it off. There's expressions of interest from people. But I think Tom hit the nail on the head, that if the return is just 8%, you're really going to struggle to find investors who are going to want to invest in this. And you identified, obviously, trying to improve that rate of return is crucial. But, aside from Tom, how do you see that you're going to attract serious, you're talking £100 billion. I know, in the world of bank bailouts doesn't sound as much as it used to a couple of years ago, but it's a huge amount of money. How are you going to find that money? Anyone on the panel?
I think for us, this is an opportunity to invest in energy project that will complement the energy portfolio, and as such, the project will compete for cash.
So you'll say you will put money in? Statoil would invest?
We're in there for the long haul, and we're in there to invest. But we do understand that the cost needs to come down, and to do that, we would do the things that we usually do. We develop new technology, we help get new suppliers to the market to increase competition, and I think there are a few rather simple moves that we can cooperate to do to make this happen in an affordable manner.
But the problem with that is that these investments that you talk about in improving supply lines and things require a huge amount of money to get them going, and unless you've got the incentive, when you compared it to oil and gas, it's not a fair comparison, is it? That really was a bonanza. That was an oil rush. It really was. This is very different. The margins are much smaller. There isn't that possibility of absolutely vast returns that there was in oil and gas. So developing this industry is a much harder slog than developing oil and gas in the North Sea. Robin.
I always feel slightly strange weighing in on these things amongst such august company, but let's not forget with oil and gas there was a very concerted policy effort and a re-regulation, an effort with tax, a real collaboration between industry to bring those costs down and to make it happen. This is a strategic need that we've got in the UK, and not just the UK but across Europe. We actually need to find new sources of energy. We need to remain competitive in the global economy. This is something that it's worth putting government incentives into. We've got support mechanisms in place. A lot of investors say they're enough, but what's needed is to make sure that we've got the long-term certainty, that the risks are minimised, and that we take away the barriers. And I think that combination will see money flow. If you talk to people in the city, which we do at Greenpeace, they say there's money there that wants to put its lot in with the renewables industry, but there are barriers in the way. So let's take away those barriers and let's create that confidence.
OK, here's the challenge. We've got a general election coming up. This is a perfect opportunity to encourage politicians to make some commitments. But obviously, you're in a really difficult environment, aren't you? Trying to persuade politicians to make the kind of investments, for example, that you'd like to see in your shipyard to enable it to take the big equipment needed to build these offshore installations. How are you going to persuade politicians that they need to say they're going to invest I mean, Clegg estimates £400 million in these kind of projects. That's a huge amount of money at a time when we're talking, it's all about austerity at the moment.
A new business sector, a new employment opportunity for everyone out there. We've seen financial services sector hasn't been as strong as it was thought it would be for the years to come. Here is an industrial sector that we can actually grow and we can lead in the world. We shouldn't talk it down. We have successfully installed quite a large amount of offshore wind relative to other nations. The last thing we need to do at this stage is to lose that advantage we have. We should grow it.
Exactly. So can I make a...
Well, I think I was going to come to Rob.
All right.
Okay, so
But can I just make a point there? I mean, you say we've installed a lot. We had nothing compared to sort of Denmark, have we? Denmark's got far bigger offshore, hasn't it? All right, go on.
The UK is leading in terms of offshore
Really?
by a margin now, actually, and in terms of each year, that margin is getting bigger. In fact, by around about 2015, we'll have 60%.
No, hold on, I'm talking about now. You know.
Well, the build's in progress, so
Right,
delivered
okay,
to
so that will
2015.
happen.
Yeah,
That's not...
absolutely, it's committed stuff. So that by 2015, will be sort of 60% of the global market will be offshore. It will be in the UK for offshore wind, and that just continues growing. That's where it currently is. But I mean, the reality is, as Tom said it, it's cost. We've got to get cost out, and that's going to happen. And Anna and other companies like Statoil are now already focused about doing that. I'm confident that'll happen. It needs support, so government's support has got to be there.
Yeah, this is the challenge, isn't it? You're going cap in hand
but the government support
now,
will come with confidence, and the confidence comes with companies like Statoil coming and saying they're going to do all this work and are doing it. It comes with the fact that we've got 9 joint ventures in the moment for around 3 involving something in the region of 15 different companies. And these are the biggest companies in the world. And they have made serious commitments to do this. Serious in the way, it's not just the money they put on the table, which is sizable. It's £500 million on the table right now. But it's not just that. It's about they have made a commitment about where they see their energy mix is going to be over the next 5 to 10 years. Once they've made those commitments, it's very difficult for them to back out. Their choices are made. They can't just suddenly, in 5 years' time, decide, oh, I'm going to do some nuclear, because it'll take another 10 years to get there. So once these things start moving, this will roll. It does need the commitment of government, and we do need to get behind that. And government will give that commitment when they're see delivery. So it is a circular problem, but it is moving and it is happening. It is very real.
But okay, Maria, it's a circular problem. How do you break the circle? How do you create that kind of win-win situation?
I want to pick up on an earlier comment you made, Justin. We're not looking. This is not a government bailout. We're not looking for government support.
All of you are saying it needs kickstarting. Absolutely, everyone here has said it needs kickstarting.
We need a stable and supportive economic and political framework, but the investment, as Rob just says, is private, and we've got the world's biggest investors and the biggest players interested in here in the UK. But no, let me make my point. We need, in the course of the next 10 years, we're going to lose a third of our generating capacity off the grid, and it's got to be replaced with something, and that all has a cost. So we're actually talking about a marginal cost, not an absolute cost of the difference, because we've got to replace that anyway. So there is that comparison we've got to make. And then tell me again, what was your question about?
You're going cap in hand to politicians.
No, that was it. We're not going cap in hand.
Well,
we're not going cap in hand. We're not looking
everyone
for
here
grants. And more to the
starting.
point, that these giant organisations who are focused on the UK at the moment, where we are leading the world in offshore wind and where we're hell-bent on ensuring that we maintain that lead, are actually saying they don't want financial incentives. That's not what they need. They want stable, long-term commitment and support for.
So this is about the electricity market more than it's about subsidies for.
Well, that's what offshore wind does. Another thing, in a recent report from Ofgem, right, is trying to get the nation to understand that the cost of energy is going up anyway. Right, it's nothing to do with offshore wind or renewables specifically, but the smaller the contribution from renewables, the greater the increase we're going to actually face.
Okay. Now, there are a couple of other people who wanted to come in. Tom, do you still have something to say on this?
Yeah, a couple of things were said. One, affordable. The other was, Rob made reference to the need to collaborate more. I think that the reality is we can actually meet many of our energy needs by investing in gas at very large scale, which will be significantly cheaper. It will expose us in terms of security of supply, and it won't be an investment in the same sense of job creation, economic development opportunity, but it will be a cheaper solution. So at the moment, to your question, how do you convince a politician to put an investment in here. We would argue that it's very much an investment, and the trick is actually not to provide very high long-term subsidies, but to provide just enough, with a focus particularly on the areas of cost reduction, which I think is the starting point. We would argue that for something less than 2 billion of investment in R&D, you can actually significantly reduce the cost, and that then makes the subsequent rollout and investment all the more viable, and it makes it an awful lot easier to get the finance on board. We kicked off an offshore wind accelerator, working with a number of key partners, where we're putting in some money. Essentially, it's collaborative R&D, coming back to Rob's point, on things where companies don't want to compete. These aren't areas of technology breakthrough where they're going to want to compete. These are things where we're just all going to have to get much better at doing things at lower cost, higher reliability, meeting all the HSE standards in the offshore environment. But put that investment in up front. Because if we just try and do it by providing an enormous subsidy over the long term, it'll cost us all a fortune, and we will lose out on the affordability argument. Politically, it will become untenable to invest in this industry. Actually, this is one of the very best industries to invest in, because it is truly an investment in our future.
Okay. Now, are there any questions that arise from that? I've got more questions, but if anybody's got any other hands up there, can I take you? Now, there are people with microphones, so we have to have a little delay. With the red and blue tie. Can you say who you are and where you're from?
Peter Hunter, Vertax Wind. I'm not quite sure who...
Sorry?
Vertax Wind.
Okay.
Peter Hunter. I'm not quite sure who to address the question to, perhaps to Tom, because he just referred to invest. I haven't heard invest in what? The Crown Estate has pushed it off, the government is behind it, and everybody has demonstrated, together with Statoil, that they're willing to invest, mostly from Europe. But what is it we're here talking about? I thought we're here talking about how is UK PLC going to benefit? What's it going to do? Because what I see from the industry is that, and perhaps Peter Fish might correct me behind, but we can only control 30% of the total cost, which is related to the foundations. We don't manufacture cables. We don't manufacture turbines. We don't manufacture most of it. Yeah. The only thing we can manufacture, as is being done now in Scotland, is the foundation. So what's the investment, and where is the 250,000 people? Maybe Bruce Valpy can answer that, because I know he's done a lot of study.
Very good question. Who wants to pick that up? What are we actually talking about investing? Well, Tom, you were the one who said we need to invest. What do you want to see the investment in?
To start off with, investing in the R&D programs, ideally on a collaborative basis across the industry, to actually find ways of doing this much cheaper. Thereafter, investing very much, as maybe Nick Clegg was alluding to today, in the infrastructure and starting to get the supply chain in place in the UK to maximise the proportion of local content. Now, absolutely accept, you will never get 100% local content in this. It would be simply economic suicide to try and do that. But there is a very big swing between the minimum required and the maximum achievable in terms of local content. We would argue that smart investment will maximise both the doability of the delivery challenge, because without a supply chain locally it simply won't be met, but also the economic returns to the UK in terms of jobs, in terms of value created for the UK, and ultimately in terms of export potential.
Because what Nick Clegg's talking about in this statement, he says we need 400, he's suggesting a £400 million investment to convert shipyards, about 7 shipyards in Britain, to do this. Now, why would investing in shipyards be...
He only mentioned Belfast.
Well, no, he doesn't mention any by name. Well, not in the press.
He doesn't know we have.
He didn't mention Belfast?
No, so he should be investing in 8 shipyards.
Anyway, tell us, why do you need the investment? Why should we be investing taxpayers' money in a private business like yours?
The benefit for the local economy and the alternative to not investing is simply importing and generating that wealth, be it in Europe or in the rest of the world, and just shipping it into the UK. And going back to a point made earlier on, we stopped supporting manufacturing in the UK a long time ago. We have suffered the consequences for it. We've seen now that the economy is very fragile because we haven't got the engineering and the skills. And it's not just about adding value, it's about the social benefits of having people in those sorts of jobs as well. So from our perspective, we can do it in the UK, so let's give us the opportunity. Yeah.
But the counter-argument to that is that the people who've bought these, who've bid for these locations, want the cheapest possible turbines, don't they? And there's an economic benefit in having the cheapest turbines provided by people who are investing in the R&D where they think the R&D investment should be made in port facilities that they think there's a clear economic benefit investing in, rather than rather than state-directed investment, which we know has a history of being quite inefficiently delivered.
So, actually, it is unlikely to come from the state. The majority of this investment is unlikely to come from the state. Actually, we figured there's around about £800 million need to be invested in supply chain in the UK, which is predominantly in the ports and the harbours and the facilities around those.
So who's supposed to put that money in?
So that's private sector. So Peter mentioned we don't have turbines in the UK, we don't have cables in the UK, all we have is balance of plant, which is the foundations and the like. Well, my point is, and I think this is generally the point now that people are coming around to, is that we don't have an option. We have to have turbines in the UK. We have to have cable manufacturing in the UK and so on. Now, we actually have the capacity to do these things. It needs a coordination and it needs a facilitation, that's for certain, and it may need some seed corn capital from government to do that. They've put some up. There's about 150 or 170 million pounds currently in the system to be expended on precisely this sort of thing. And you will see results of that coming in through to some of the ports, particularly on the east coast of the UK, which is where the bigger projects are going to come up first. And that will bring in the supply chain, the broader supply chain, which is the turbine manufacturers, and you will see turbine manufacturers of a global scale in the UK within 5 years.
So it's going to happen?
It will happen, yes.
Anne, you wanted to speak.
I would just say that when you're debating whether this needs a kickstart, you've already done that. You're past that point a long time ago. So seen from my point of view, we are well down the line. There will be investments. There will be a lot of private money coming into this. And the very practical example is that we all need harbours for our operations phase. And there will be investment in harbours on the back of contracts for the likes of us. And I think you will see the ball is rolling and rolling, and it's keeping up pace very quickly now.
I mean, does everyone in the audience agree? Because on that basis, there's nothing to debate. Because it's happening and we're rising to the challenge and we're going to get this huge benefit that Tom talked about right at the outset. Can I, somebody with a microphone, we'll stop.
Yeah, and this is Bruce Valpy, thanks Peter for asking me to respond. It's not a single solution that's needed here. You've got to carve things up into a number of areas. Balance of plant is one area where we have foundation manufacturers manufacture. We've got the world's leading manufacturer of jacket foundations in Bifab in Scotland now. There are other guys investing now. There's government supporting that investment now. There is a cable manufacturer, Rob and Maria and whoever else who maybe you don't know, there is a cable manufacturer that's manufacturing cables for Greater Gabbard now. There's more needed in that area. The 35% of the cost of these offshore wind farms is the turbine, and there's very little activity happening on the turbine now. One of the key players is sitting next to me here. Converteam are the world's leaders in power converters for wind turbines, based in the UK. But a big fraction of the cost of the turbine is actually coming from overseas at the moment. And the key thing is to unlock the supply chain for the turbine components, the big castings, bearings, all sorts of bits and pieces, which is what gives the most jobs. You have to get those turbine manufacturers set up in the UK. Rob's right. There's a lot of work going on within government and with the RDAs to get them to come to the UK. It's not a level playing field. UK ports that are offering those guys deals now are private enterprises looking to make a return on their investment. The ports that they're competing with on the continent are municipally owned, regionally owned, so they're taking a bigger picture view in judging the cost for those turbine manufacturers of moving in. So I think that's where there is some room for government and other support to actually just make it a level playing field. Then I think UK businesses have a good chance to succeed. Having said that, the continental suppliers to the wind industry are used to 20% growth year on year for the last 20 years. They're confident to invest. Manufacturing in the UK has struggled in recent years. There are a lot of people that are confident to invest, but there are still a lot that are quite sceptical of this industry. So Rob's point about confidence is absolutely vital here.
Any other questions?
Hello, my name's Ian McMorran from Allianz Specialised Investment. Just taking on that point, the difference between the UK market, the the continent. Going back to Tom's point as well about the UK having delivered the gigawatt growth in energy capacity back in the 1960s, sure, but that was a nationalised industry. This is going to sound like heresy, but what we're looking to do here in the North Sea is actually build a high-voltage grid network and a huge gigawatt-scale power capacity. Does the panel think that the market can deliver this? When actually, when you compare to Germany, it's actually more of a controlled government system. I really doubt that the market will deliver in the timescale, and maybe there should be more central planning.
Yeah, more central planning. Can I take Robin and then you, Anne? Is that okay?
Yeah, I want to pick up that last point, but wrap it with an earlier comment. In fact, your question, Justin, about what's the argument going cap in hand to politicians? I don't think we should be going cap in hand to politicians. We should be going and demanding that they show a credible response to the various economic and energy challenges that face the country. And I think what they do strategically to ensure that we seize a huge slice of the growth of wind energy, and particularly offshore wind energy, should be the test of their credibility and their competence and their stewardship of the UK economy. It's a competitiveness issue, which brings us back to issues like grid. Most of the incumbent energy technologies have got huge subsidies embedded in the infrastructure they already have access to. The national grid's already there. It's at the sites that they can use. It doesn't currently extend to the sites that the wind industry can use. They've got it because it was built using public funds in the past. You know, the wind industry now needs a similar intervention to give it the kind of level playing field and infrastructural context to grow, and I think that's perfectly valid. There's just strategic overview. You know, we can ask the market to deliver some of the investment, but unless we give a stronger signal about the scale of ambition, the location it's going to go, whereabouts and what kind of investment we're looking for, which bits of the UK economy potentially could support it, then we're not competing with the rest of Europe, because those sort of specific and credible sort of roadmaps are there, and we haven't had that. And then, of course, we can't change the history of failure in this country to really deliver on our renewable possibilities. We've had, 12 years of very, very slow progress. So that means, at the very least, we have to talk much more confidently at the front bench level across all parties about the long-term intentions and genuine commitment of whichever party comes to power after the next election. So in the absence of a sort of continued growth over the last few years, we at least need consistent and continued speeches from leaders saying they intend to deliver. And I think those things will actually be much better than just tinkering with the subsidies.
Our questioner looks a little bit sceptical, though. Are you persuaded by that? I mean, there is there's a powerful argument there, isn't there, about the existing subsidy to current energy
I just
suppliers.
think the scale of what we're trying to do here, I'm just not convinced the market is going to deliver it.
And I'm agreeing. I think more than the market. Yep.
There has to be more collaboration and sort of central planning to get this going. I think it's such a scale, an engineering challenge that it's a fantastic opportunity, but it's huge, and the market, I just don't think will deliver it.
Well, that's very different from what you were all saying about it's all on the way, it's all happening, there's investment
We were talking about supply chain. We've probably had this conversation before, I suspect, but the notion of some sort of centralised planning of an infrastructure scale deployment of what we're talking about I think is certainly needed. I mean, I can't imagine how it can happen otherwise. But I think there is things starting to move a little bit. I think there's two parts to that I could maybe point to. One is on the grid side, with the off-toes that have come out. There's a regulated return.
The only person in the room who doesn't know what that is.
There's an offshore transmission licensing regime which has been set out to enable investment in the offshore connection infrastructure that's currently required for rounds 1 and round 2. So what has come out of that is a regulated return infrastructure investment, which, from what I'm hearing, has been quite attractive, as from an investor's perspective. And it was oversubscribed in terms of the competition and going into that. I think, but that's relatively small scale. That's probably a couple of £1 billion, that sort of thing. The scale we're talking about is probably 10 times that. And I absolutely agree that mobilizing that will require a considerably greater effort. But I think the simple one there of giving clear line of sight to the returns on capital is the prerequisite to getting that investment community there.
So I've got to throw in the quote, which you kind of alluded to, Tom, earlier. But Alexander Medvedev, the deputy chairman of Gazprom, said yesterday, in response, presumably, to looking at the round 3 awards, and he said, look, it's 3 times cheaper to get the emissions reduction targets by replacing old gas-fired dirty coal stations with new gas-fired power stations. I mean, that's a huge economic incentive to invest in gas, isn't it? I mean, very hard to compete with.
It might get you part way, but then what do you do with all the gas stations? We need more than just short-term cuts. We need sustained transition of our economy towards a full suite of low-carbon technologies. That means not just cutting emissions in the next 5 years, which we also have to do, but it means about planning and having a suite of technologies available, which is why you can't ignore onshore wind, and it's why you can't ignore marine renewables in the round, with wave and tidal coming through as well. This is about investing in options, making sure that Britain is well placed to continue to compete going forward. The wind industry globally grew 30% last year.
That's the rhetoric.
But it's not even the rhetoric, it's the numbers. It's the numbers.
Economics.
There's this booming industry worldwide that continues to grow through the recession, and we've got to make a choice about whether we're part of that or not. We've equally got to make a choice of whether we're tackling climate change or not, whether we're playing a productive role in the world or not. And those things all require that we actually embrace this technology, look at what needs to be done to make sure that we're part of it, and have a long-term view and a strategic kind of direction set by government, and then with business following behind. So I think in a way, the sort of how can it be done, is it possible, shall we try kind of questions are the wrong questions entirely. We need to move well beyond the should we and to the how we of this issue, and really focus on that.